How's it going, everybody? Top Shelf Toy here for Game Passionate with another gameplay video. This one, a follow-up to the Aqua Kitty teaser. So we're going to be playing some Aqua Kitty. I am going to run through the last couple of levels in the creamy Cove area of the campaign. So without further ado, here we go. I did look into Tikipod, the developer, and found out a little bit of information from their website. They're based in the UK, and they've been an independent games development company since 2009. As well as developing its own titles, Tikipod works with other companies and developers on their games. Tikipod games are collaborations created by a variety of senior game developers. I have heard of another game in this series called Astro Kitty, where the cat, I don't even know what to call it. I was going to say army, but I don't think that's necessarily accurate. The cat survivors, the cat species, the industrialized felines. I'm not sure how to identify them. Anyways, not only have they figured out how to mine, milk, and develop submarines, but apparently in Astro Kitty, they take it to space. Like I said, haven't played it yet, but I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on it in the future. I will confess, I have not yet fully beaten Aqua Kitty. And it's not out of lack of desire or lack of interest, it just hasn't happened. There are so many games to play and only so much time to do it. The time that I have spent with it has been a blast, no pun intended. It's a lot of fun. The game is straightforward and it does exactly what it's setting out to do. You may have heard me say before, I love it when a game feels like you can just plunk a quarter into it, and that's exactly what this game feels like. It's something that could be fitting on any kind of arcade cabinet with a joystick and big old fat buttons to slam down on while you're eating pizza and have quarters resting up on the screen for next game. It's great. I love it a lot, and I love seeing new versions of this kind of classic gameplay because it's something that I'm very familiar with. And I don't ever want to see it disappear. I feel like there's a strong reason that this style was successful, and that reason is because it's fun to play. It's great. It still is great to this day. Generally, with these types of games, things start out pretty easy and get much more complicated. As you can see, things in the later levels of the second area are just that, much more complicated than the earlier areas. First, you just have to worry about these jellyfish-looking things, like this guy back here. Get rid of that. And they steal the cat miners, and those are your primary problems. As the game progresses, you start seeing a lot more heavy robot fish in the waters that you've got to deal with. They may not be interested in stealing the miners, but they are much harder to shoot down, and they shoot a lot more at you. As someone who plays a lot of these games, my recommendation to any newbies would be focus on your submarine and your ship. It's a lot easier to pay attention to that and avoid it being hit than trying to take in all the different sights and sounds that the level has to offer. They're distracting and then can oftentimes lead to you getting blown up because you were focusing on the wrong ship. So my advice always to people in these types of games is focus on your ship first and then everything else secondary. Some of you all may have noticed that the submarine itself is constantly changing directions. That is an intentional gameplay mechanic designed by the developers. The submarine only shoots out of the front, so you have to constantly switch directions to make sure that you're facing the enemy that you want to take out. Also, the submarine only moves as fast as possible in the direction that it's facing. If you're trying to reverse, you'll go backwards, but not as fast as if you were facing that direction. Some other features that I find really endearing about this game are that the power-ups don't disappear. A lot of times with games like this, when you destroy the enemy that drops the power-up, you have a limited amount of time to pick up that power-up before it starts flashing and then eventually disappears forever. That's not the case with this game. When the power-up drops, it stays on the board until the end of that particular level. This means when an enemy drops something like a bomb, for example, you don't have to pick it up if there's nobody around. You can wait and lure enemies closer to it to get the maximum effect of whatever particular power-up you're looking for. Same thing if you were to double your cannon power. It doesn't make much sense if there's no enemies to shoot down, so you can just leave it there until you get bombarded, and then it's a helpful pickup at that time. I have to give a shout out to the Powershot, one of my favorite moves in the game. It basically is about triple the strength of your normal pea shooter, but it does overheat, so you have to use it sparingly. It is a great tool to help get out of a jam. Lastly, I would say that I am a huge fan of not dying after taking a single hit. I mean, there's a time and a place for dying after one touch, but I appreciate that the designers gave you 3 hearts or 3 hits at the start of every level. In some levels, you really need all the extra hits that you can take. There ends up being a lot of underwater traffic that you've got to keep an eye on and navigate through. To properly clear the Creamy Cove, you have to beat this last level, which is a lot more gnarly than the other ones leading up to it. As you can see, there are these giant, heavily armored piranha fish now, not just the little ones that die after a couple shots from your pea shooter. There are a lot more power-ups, however, and that helps quite a bit. This vertical shot works the best in that particular situation there. Rarely can you break the surface of the water to save one of those kitty cats if they are taken away, but if you have the properly angled shot and enough patience to use it, you'll be okay. I always like levels like this where they add more action and more enemies to make things a little bit more complicated to close out a series of levels. I think it adds a lot to it. I appreciate more chaos, and it's fun to use multiple power-ups as opposed to just 1 or 2 on any given level. The boss crab down here is a real pain in the butt, to be perfectly honest. You have to be extremely patient trying to fight this thing. It has sort of a centralized crystal in the middle, but you can only get at it when the robot claws are sort of out of the way, as you'll see shortly. It takes a fair amount of patience and a lot of dexterity to make sure that you're not getting caught in all the missiles that it shoots at you. You can see, it is not a nice robot crab. I don't know if there are nice robot crabs, but this one is definitely not. So the trick, if there is a trick, just like before, is to not lose focus on your little submarine. It doesn't matter how many shots you fire at that thing, it matters how many times you get hit. So that should be what you're most concerned about. Dodging, moving around, sticking and moving, all a big part of these types of games. Anyone who's ever played Asteroid or any of the old school arcade games knows. You just gotta keep moving, you gotta be patient and wait for that opening. It will come, but not if you die first. This giant robotic bottom feeder took me a few times to sort of figure out what it was doing and how it was doing it. You've got that centralized blast of pink shots that you got to stay away from, but those freaking heat-seeking torpedoes are by far the worst. Those give a lot more complication. You can only shoot at those gray parts of his body or those beige parts of his body when the claw is away from it, and he seems to alternate when he has that claw up and down. See how I'm shooting and it's not doing anything? Now that it's down, you're doing some damage on that beige area, and then that crystal part is exposed. Once you do expose that crystal part, don't forget about your power shot and go ahead and hammer that thing. It's by far the best use of it. Otherwise, you're going to have to knock down the other side as well. So you can see once the crystal's exposed and we have a clear shot at it, make short work of that punk. And there it is, everybody. The completion of the Creamy Cove. Keep an eye on our channel for more videos like this, as we'll be putting them up as soon as we can make them. If you haven't already, please don't forget to give us a like or subscribe. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with more soon.